Okay. Okay. So here goes our first live. It says it's working, but it's not coming up. Maybe it's working. We'll see. Okay. Is this working? Okay, this says it's working, but it's not up. There it is. Okay, now it's up. Okay. Okay, welcome. This live today is all about Living Like a Local is starting to do relocation tours. Yes, because I know there's relocation tours to go to Panama that are really popular. There's relocation tours to go to Costa Rica. There's relocation tours if you want to go to Mexico. But since El Salvador is such kind of a new open country, there hasn't been any relocation tours for El Salvador. But dun, 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 that is changing now. In fact, we've already done 3 different relocation tours. So I am here on this live in order to answer any and all your questions about what about a relocation tour and about El Salvador and what it's like to live as an expat in El Salvador, and yeah, and what it takes to move to El Salvador from another country. So first thing we're going to start with is safety, because that's the #1 question. And yes, El Salvador is super safe. 5 years ago, yeah, it was the murder capital of the Western Hemisphere. But because of a rock star president, now it is probably the safest country, I believe, in the Western Hemisphere. It is safer than the US, and I think it's even safer than Canada now. So safety is not an issue. You can walk around with your phone out. In fact, it's kind of a surreal experience, because if you've walked around other Latin American countries, you have to be careful. You have to keep your money in your wallet, up front or in a fanny pack, and you don't take your phone out because somebody walking by might swipe it. But that's not the case in El Salvador. Any time of the day, you can walk around at night, early morning. You can have your cell phone out. You don't have to be listening or watching if somebody's following you too closely. It's everywhere I have been, it is safe. Country, out in the country, in the city, the buses are safe. Hi there. And so if you have any questions about moving to El Salvador, or about what it's like to live in El Salvador as an expat, post them in the chat and I will try and answer them. Because I am just starting to do some relocation tours for diaspora, or for people that are interested or thinking about moving to El Salvador, because it's not for everybody. I mean, there's lots of expats that are thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll go to Canada, or maybe I'll go to Panama, maybe I'll go to Costa Rica, maybe I'll go to Mexico. And you're going to have a very different vibe in each of those countries. And the El Salvador vibe is a vibe of empowerment, of let's get up, let's get moving, and let's make the most amazing country we can. And that's not exactly the vibe as an expat in Mexico. Just saying, it's totally different. So you have a question, says, does El Salvador allow dual or multiple citizenship? Yes, there's lots of American citizens, Canadian citizens that have citizenship in El Salvador. But right now, you can either get that citizenship by paying $1 million, applying. It costs $1,000 to apply. And then if they accept your application, you can pay $1 million and you can instantly get your passport, get your DUI, and be in El Salvador citizenship. If you don't have $1 million on you, then there's a path tour that you have to go through residency. You go start with temporary residency, then you go through permanent residency, and then you can apply for citizenship. In fact, that's where I'm at right now. I'm at the point of applying for citizenship. The shortest amount of time it takes doing it that route is 3 years. The longest, well, it depends on how long you want to be a resident. Let's see. I'm craving pupusas. You know what? Me too. I'm currently in the States right now, and I feel you. I totally feel you, Callan. I'm totally craving pupusas. I love them. Anyway, okay, so what I've started from my YouTube channel, so many people came asking me about seeing my expat life in El Salvador, and they asked me about, well, what it's like to live there. Could I come and live down there? So I started doing some relocation tours 2 months ago, and I've done 3 tours with foreigners, mainly retirees, that are thinking about coming down to the country. But you need to know El Salvador Vibe is very different from living as an expat in Mexico, living in as an expat in Panama. That's why I started to do these tours, because some people, you know, thinking of the Mexico expat experience will say, well, I'll go do El Salvador. And El Salvador is not, it's not as, you could say, expat developed, I guess you could say, as say Mexico or Panama. And so moving down to El Salvador now, you're going to be a pioneer. This is a new, it's kind of a new country. When my husband and I started our relocation immigration company, not now, sweetheart, I'm on.
If you need me, I'll be in the kitchen.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Sorry about that. Anyway, you'd kind of be a pioneer because honestly, 3 years ago, nobody wanted to move to El Salvador. It was the most dangerous country in the Western Hemisphere. So everybody was leaving, nobody was coming in. But with the massive changes, that has completely flipped. So yeah, there's not a lot of expats there. There's not a lot of expat communities. So moving there, you are going to be a little bit of pioneer. But the wonderful thing is, you're one of the first, and this is such an exciting time. There's so much hope and just action, and just everyone's alive there and so happy. And it's such a different vibe from going to Europe or going to the States, or especially Canada. It's so, additionally, I'd say if you're an expat thinking about going down to Central America, if you have an attitude of kind of what's in it for me, El Salvador is not the country for you. No, that might, Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica, that might be yours. But El Salvador is, the expats that are moving to El Salvador are much more the vibe of, I want to prioritize freedom. I want to prioritize integrity. I want to prioritize my values over, per se, necessarily my money, kind of thing. That's really what it is. Like, for example, my last relocation tour I took with, it was a woman that wanted to come down and serve the people. She just felt called by God that El Salvador was the country for her. So she came down and we did a big tour, seeing all the different humanitarian projects that are going around El Salvador, until she felt which one she was being called to. And yeah, and it's awesome. Like, just the people are so excited. They're so humble, and they're excited for a future that they never could have dreamed of 5 years ago. Okay, more questions. I've seen some websites say it's only for Salvadorans by birth, so that clears things up. Oh, okay. Yeah, so Salvadorans, reign in relief, like Salvadorans that have lived, they're called diaspora. Diaspora are Salvadorans that live in outside of El Salvador. So if their parents are Salvadoran, or if they were maybe born in El Salvador, right, then they can get their DUIs. Oh, thanks, Kayleen. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you? So what it is they, like somebody who says they have a Salvadoran parent that lives in the U.S., they can go to the embassy, the El Salvador embassy, and they can get a DUI. A DUI is like a social security number up in the United States, or like your government identification number. And once they have a DUI, and they can get their passport, they will technically get their citizenship, even if they were born in the US and they haven't necessarily applied for citizenship. But you can do the long process. That's totally, totally doable. So, yeah. So the other thing, so what has happened is I'm starting these relocation tours, and what our relocation tour, the relocation tour encompasses seeing kind of, how do I say this? It's kind of an immersive El Salvador experience. You come in and you go all in, because the point is to take you from, I'm interested, what if, maybe, to 90%, go from this side to 90%, yes, El Salvador is for me, or nope, I need to go check out somewhere else. Because honestly, nowadays, you don't have time to be wasting and doing research of hours and hours of watching YouTube and the internet. You just need to come, get in there, see if it checks out with you, see if it's your vibe. If you're like, yes, if you say llega, you could say in Spanish, if it like arrives at you and you just know this is the place for you. Or if you get here and you're like, nope, this is not what I'm looking for. Because honestly, the worst thing in the world is wasting time. So that's why I put these tours together. And this is how the tour works out. We start off for 2 days. First 2 days, we're in San Sal. We're in the city, in the capital. And for those 2 days, we start off straight off. The very first night, we go to Pura Candela. And Pura Candela is the restaurant of Los Hermanos Flores. And you get in there and you dance and you hear Salvadoran cumbia. It's almost like their national anthem. And you hear the music because El Salvador is a very sharing and loud country. So, yeah. So if you don't like hearing other people's music, sometimes late at night, then again, that's one way to know if the country's for you. So we're gonna dance our first night. You're gonna learn the cumbia. You're gonna see how families interact and hang out and play together. And you're gonna get fully immersed in Los Hermanos Flores. Then the second night, or the second day, because of the kind of big transformation, is Sunday. All of our tours start on Saturday. So Sunday morning, El Salvador is definitely prioritizing kind of the more spiritual side of life too. So Sunday morning, you get to go church shopping. You get to go try out whatever might be your spiritual tribe. So you could kind of find out your tribe, find other people that have similar values or similar worship structure as you do. So we'll find the church or the group that you might mix best with. So that's in the morning. And in the afternoon, we go and we see neighborhoods around San Sal. We see different apartments. So you can see how El Salvador homes are different from homes in your home country or different from homes in Mexico. After we see real estate in the afternoon, at night, every single night, we have an expert. One of our experts, our business partners, comes in and will give you a presentation answering all of your questions about the most important questions about coming to El Salvador. For example, our first night is laws and immigrations. And so our lawyer comes in and he lays it all down. What is your path to residency? What are the laws that are different than in your home country that might trip you up and get you in trouble? He goes over, he answers all your questions about buying houses, about buying any major goods or services in the country and the legal consequences of that. And the biggest thing is he talks to you about contracts. Contracts are a big one. I'd say about all of our clientele at Living Like a Local are foreigners. And I'd say half of them are people that are coming in, and the other half are people that are already here, that expats that have kind of gotten in trouble because they didn't know what they were getting into. They signed a contract or they assumed something that they were doing was like how they would do it in their home country. And it didn't turn out that way. So, I mean, value alone for that first night of understanding the laws of El Salvador and how they're different from where you may have came from is just immense, immense value. Then our next day, we get up and we're going to go and see some of how the city is laid out and the shopping and how you get the things that you used to get back home. How do you get them in El Salvador? How does shipping work? There is no Amazon Prime. So the next morning we go and and you get to see the different parts of San Salvador. Everything from high end in San Benito to the lower middle end of San Sal, and some of the bigger enclosed fenced in neighborhoods. And of course, it always depends upon the group that I have with me. I typically do two types of trips. One is for childless people, in other words, retirees, digital nomads. And then the other type of trip is for families and for investors. So if it's the family investor trip, then that next morning, Monday morning, we go see schools. We go see bilingual schools because education is a whole nother, it's a whole nother level of complex in El Salvador, because there are public schools, there are international schools, there are private schools, there are alternative schools, there are homeschooling groups, and that's one of the main first things you need to figure out if you're coming to El Salvador with kids. So that's usually our Monday morning plan. After Monday morning, that's when we take off and we head out to Santa Ana. So after 2 days in the city, seeing how city life is, we head up to the mountains and to the volcanoes where it's nice and cool. So we head up to Santa Ana. We stay on a hotel on Lake Coatepeque, one of the biggest, most beautiful lakes in El Salvador. And that evening, we start to explore a little bit of Ruta de las Flores. Now, if you have ever traveled to Costa Rica before, Ruta de las Flores, let's say you loved La Fortuna, okay? If you like the La Fortuna area of Costa Rica, then you will love Ruta de las Flores, because Ruta de las Flores, it's a higher elevation, so it's much cooler. Definitely no ACs. You don't need an AC up there. You might need a hot water heater, but you aren't gonna need an AC. We spend 2 days up there seeing what the markets are like, seeing what the houses are like up in the higher elevations. The very next morning, we go up to Cerro Verde. We go up a volcano and we see what it's like up in the land of over 100 volcanoes. You need to understand volcanoes and you need to at least go and see the most popular one. So the very next morning, we head up to Cerro Verde to see the Santa Ana volcano and Izalco. And then after that, we head on back to Santa Ana, and we'll see some of the communities around Santa Ana. And that night, in fact, we'll also see a private and a public hospital. And then that night, our expert for that night is a medical expert. He will come and he will explain to you how the medical system works. The private system, the public system, and even alternative medicines that are now a lot more available than they ever were before. They'll come in, they'll explain to you about insurance, how insurance works in El Salvador. Yeah, just for any, because, I mean, that's one thing you do not want lost in translation is your medical stuff. So, yeah, so our partner comes in and talks to you on that. And also, during these dinners where we have these presentations, I have some of my friends, expats that already live in the country. I invite my friends to come in for our dinners, and you will sit at a table with expats that are already living there. You can talk to them, ask them questions, get to know some contacts for the future. For if you do come down, you'll already have some friends in place and some people that you know, which is super, super valuable when moving to a new country. Okay, then after 2 days in the Santa Ana, Ruta de las Flores area, we head down to the beach. We start first off in Los Cobanos and Ahuachapan, Acajutla, sorry, in Acajutla, and there you're going to get to see, okay, how El Salvador is set up. The western beaches have a lot of reefs and a lot of lava rocks in the ocean. So those beaches are really best for like, for beachcombers, for walking along. They're very swimmable. They're very family friendly. There's not these big crashing waves. There's no surfers to look out for. This is not the surfing side of El Salvador. So it's the snorkeling side of El Salvador. So we go and we tour some of the communities, because there's some retirement communities around Las Veranetas, and we get to stay, and we stay at Las Veranetas, which is, I think, the most family-friendly resort in El Salvador. And you'll get to see some of the real estate around there, and you'll get to meet expats that currently live there in El Salvador. Two really great people, William and Sarita, that came from New York, and they're one of the pioneers in that western area of El Salvador. You'll get to see what it's like living down on the beach, especially the difference in temperature. It's a lot hotter at the beach. Then the very next, after we have I forgot. That night, we're going to be talking about rent, build, or buy. What do you do with your housing? Is it best to rent a house? What can you expect? Is it best to, buy a house already made? Or maybe you want to build your very own because you look around and you're like, no, I want my kitchen just the way I want my kitchen. So, but building in another country, yeah, that's a whole nother realm. So, and you've got to be careful on you've got to be careful on who you contract with to do your building, and even you're buying your land. Realtors in El Salvador are not like realtors up north. There isn't like this big realtors association where they have to be certified. Honestly, just about anybody can sit there and say, oh, hey, you want this piece of land? I'll work it out for you. And many a foreigner have gotten scammed because they didn't know what to look for. And that's a very sad part. And that's part of the reason why we have this night. And we also have contractors that we have used before, our clients have used before, that understand first world kind of standards in building and construction, which is not universal, and they speak English, and you can stop by the construction site anytime you want. And they have a start and an end date. Because sometimes down here, sometimes people don't show up when they stay out a little too late the night before. So you really have to have a contractor that if you're on a timeline or a time crunch, you have to have a contractor that you can trust. And I can tell you right now, it is not going to be the cheapest contractor, because down here, you get what you pay for. Now, there are some people that are extort the heck out of you. I just heard of a woman who was getting a price quote for she wanted 2 retention walls, and the retention walls were like 16 feet by only like 1.5, or like, I think a meter, is a meter by 16 foot. And she needed two. The other wall was smaller, like 5 feet. She was quoted $80,000. No. As a foreigner, sometimes they assume and they see you as money bags. You should not be paying $80,000 for a retention wall. You can get a nice house built down here for $25,000 to $30,000. So you've got to know who you're working with, and you've got to be smart. So that's why I have our approved builders come and do the presentation on Tuesday night, so you can know, so you can have contracts, you can have people that you can trust, that are honest, upfront, and dependable. After Los Cobanos, we drive all the way along the shore. We pass by Tunco. We pass through the surfing strip, Surf City, all the way from Misata, all the way over past Libertad. That area of El Salvador, that's kind of Surf City. That's where all the surfers are. That's where most of the surfers are at. And that's the big tourism strip. That's also one of the most expensive places to buy or live in El Salvador. We will stop by there. We'll stop on the way at San Blas, which has a fairly large expat community. It's a gated community on the beach, and it's kind of like you could say like a beach country club, because they have lots of organized community events. It's very safe. It's very fun. I know many expats that live in there, and they love it. So we're going to stop there for lunch, and you'll be able to meet some of the expats that live there in San Blas. Most of them are retired. And then we're going to continue on and head down to Costa del Sol. Now, Costa del Sol is kind of the other end. Past La Libertad, there isn't a lot of surfing. And that is because there's a pretty big riptide. And so people do not go very far out in the water when you go east from La Libertad. Because of that riptide, because it's not very safe, and because, so there's not a lot of surfing down there. But again, it's not necessarily a very big swimming beach, you could say. Hi there, Victor. I'm answering questions tonight about moving or living in El Salvador as an expat. So down by Costa del Sol, there's actually a big bay, and there's a big estuary, and that's where most of the yachts, people that come sailing in, people that come down in their yachts, that's the area where there's a lot of retirees that have ranchos. So rancho is when you have a beach property that usually has a beach house, usually has a guest house. It's anywhere from, I'd say, 12 to 20 meters wide, and maybe, I don't know, 50 meters long, all the way to the beach. It's just, Costa del Sol is just this little sandbar, and there's a road that goes down the middle, and then the properties go out to the bayside, and then the properties go out to the ocean side. And so those properties are nice, big, long properties. They're very beautiful. That beach is very tranquil. It's very calm. It's mainly private. There are some public access points, but it's not a busy touristy beach at all. So we will go, our last day, we go down there and we stay in Bahia del Sol, where you'll get to see what it's like to live kind of the retired beach life and what Costa del Sol is like. And that night is the most important night, in my humble opinion, because that night, it's not about El Salvador anymore, it's about you. Because El Salvador is not like Mexico, Panama, or Costa Rica. It is a country in the middle of transformation. So that night, it's about what are you here to give? Why does El Salvador want you to live there? And I know that's a very different thing than you will find at your Panama relocation tours or a Mexico relocation tour. But honestly, El Salvador is a tiny country. It's a pulgarcito. It's like the size of Delaware, okay? We're a tiny, tiny country. We don't necessarily want or need expats to come in and take over. It's got to be about the transformation. It's got to be about what are you here to give? Why do the Salvadorans want you to come and help their country during this time of transformation? And that's where we'll highlight some of the nonprofits that are going on, some of the causes, some of the amazing changes, and what passions, what tools that you will bring and offer to the Salvadoran people to make El Salvador a better country. And that's my favorite night. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview of what an El Salvador relocation tour is about. And we have one scheduled for every month for the next 4 months. And I have Q&As here every Sunday at 4 o'clock. If you have your questions, bring your questions in here, and I will see you on Sunday, because these are exciting times, and El Salvador is it's amazing, and it's wonderful. Something I never thought I'd be able to live through and see. And thank you, Brenda. Brenda, who's in the comments, she just went on my last relocation tour, and she loved it. And she says, I agree, this is safer than anywhere I've ever been. And that's saying something. So, if there's no further questions, I'm going to jump off. And if you have further questions, or if you'd like to go on a relocation tour, go to liveinlikealocal.com. And living like a local, but there's no G. There's no G. Don't put in a G, or else you'll end up in Canada. So it's liveinlikealocal.com without a G. Okay? And don't even put the www dot. Okay? Just there. You can send your questions in there, and I'll try and answer them at the next live. Or you can apply. Go in there. There's a questionnaire at the beginning of the website, and you can apply. Tell us what you're looking for. Tell us all about why you're coming down there. And we'll see how we can best help you create an amazing future in this beautiful country of the new country of freedom. Please, what's the cost of most expensive pizza in San Salvador? Victor, if you go in this channel, Living Like a Local in SV in El Salvador, go in this channel and scroll down, because I have 3 different best pizzas in El Salvador. Okay? And one is called the Clásico. If you go to the Clásica, that is the most expensive. You can see their whole menu. That's where you'll find the most expensive and the most delicious, amazing, blow your mind pizza in El Salvador. I think you might have to scroll a bit, or you can search and just say best pizza in El Salvador, Living Like a Local, and it'll pop up. Okay? Yeah, Clásico is awesome. It's in Santa Tecla. Beautiful and ambient, amazing pizza. Okay, that's it. We'll see y'all later. Take care. I'm Jenny Adi, shining my light so you can shine yours. See you later.